Facebook family. I hope you are doing well on this evening. I got Instagram on live right now as well. Once you come on, let me know what city and state you're from. Let me know what country you're from. I am not going to prolong the time. I am extremely excited about sharing this message on tonight. We're going to revisit something that we shared. Man, it's been years since I talked about Samson and Delilah, but I think that you'll find a couple of pointers that we pull out of his story relevant. And so, as you all know, my rule is I'm not talking at you, I'm talking with you. So please, let's make this as interactive as possible. Would love to hear your feedback and for you to share your thoughts throughout the dialogue as well. For those of you who want to grab your Bibles, go right ahead. I'm just going to reference a few scriptures, but we're going to go ahead and get started on tonight. For those who are joining us for the first time on Live Chats with Shavonda, this is something that I do every Monday night at 9 p.m. on both Facebook and Instagram. We've been doing this thing now for quite some time, since 2013. It all started with a situation where I found myself in a crossroads where I was in a very tumultuous relationship. It was like one of those moments in my life where I could get bitter or better. I decided to get better. And in doing that, I vowed that one, I would never make that same mistake again. And two, if I could help as many Christian singles as I possibly can to avoid some of the pitfalls that I went through in that relationship, then it would have been worth all of what I went through. And so that's where Live Chats with Shavonda was birthed. Since then, I've created a nonprofit organization called Singles on a Rise, SOAR for short. And it's about empowering Christian singles to be the best version of themselves and live their best lives. And at some point, I will share more information about all we have going on there. But I'm not going to prolong the time. Let's go ahead and get into it on tonight. All right. So tonight we're talking about Samson. So Samson is a very interesting character in the Bible. And when I was reading and pondering what to share with you all tonight, I really felt like it was time for us to kind of revisit Samson, because there are a lot of nuggets that we can pull out of the book of Judges, chapters 14 through 16, when it talks about Samson. But there are just a few specific things, 6 as a matter of fact, that I want to share tonight that I believe you will hopefully find helpful. So if you have pen and paper, make sure that you start to write these down. All right. The first thing we need to understand in who Samson was, as it compares to us as Christian believers today, right? Is he was very special. He was called to be a Nazarite, and a Nazarite is simply someone who typically would make a vow to the Lord for over a period of time, and during that time, they would not cut their hair. They would vow to not drink wine or fermented type drinks. And then they would not touch dead things. That's including animals, people, what have you. You might say, well, who wants to touch dead things? There's so much symbolism in that, but we're not even going to go there tonight. Okay. But then lastly, as in Israelite, any Israelite, they were encouraged to just marry within their own kind, meaning to be equally yoked. And so when we find ourselves in this story with Samson, he has done a lot of decision making on his own. That he kind of did his own thing, right? But he was supposed to be set apart. And that leads me to my first point. And listen, I'm going to say it to blue in the face. You can take it how you want to take it. If you are to enjoy the full benefits of being a Christian single, you must live a consecrated lifestyle. I mean, I don't know who lied and said you can live, in and out and do this and that, and God's still gonna love you. Yes. Is he gonna forgive you? Yes. Does he forget? Absolutely. But in order to enjoy the full benefits of who you can be as a Christian single to the Lord, you have to live a consecrated lifestyle. It's just that important. And so when I look at the book of Judges, when we talk about Samson, a lot of his story is surrounding him not being able to identify his value. You'll see time and time again, Samson makes mistakes and he makes decisions with no disregard to his vow to the Lord, no regard to the rules that were set forth for a Nazarite in his time. He didn't care. He did not care. He did what he wanted to do. He married who he wanted to marry. And in fact, that's one of the reasons why I believe that he made some of the decisions that he made. You know, just because, you know, God sometimes will allow you, you'll see that even in Samson's case, he used what Samson did, like, you know, how everything started to pop off. You know, Samson was called as a Nazarite, but not only that, he was called to save, to be the deliverer of his people. He was called to be the one to protect them, to fight for them. And so what he decides to do is do his own thing. He saw himself a pretty redhead or red, you know, I don't know what she looked like, but whatever, whoever she was big boned or what, I don't know. But it was something about this lady that he wanted. He wanted this chick that was in the house of the Philistines. He didn't want somebody that was of his kind. And so, you know, he decides to marry out for, you know, for his own desires. And in doing so, he finds himself in a world of trouble because the Philistines didn't want to rock with him no way. And so what we see here is that he continues to just be disobedient to what God has called him to do. And, you know, what I find interesting is that it talks about in the Bible where God uses Samson's wicked acts to provoke the Philistines. He does. And what is interesting about that is that what happens is he goes to marry this chick, right? That is a Philistine. And you know, they don't like it. I mean, they don't like it. They don't like what he represents. And all of that he does, he goes out, he goes, after he marries her, he goes drinking, and after he goes drinking, he comes back for his wife, and his wife, it has been now placed in the hands of his best man. Like, this is all gonna be found in the Bible. I'm not making this stuff up. But that's why I'm telling y'all, whatever you think could possibly happen in the Bible, I'm telling you, anything in this life you can find in the Word of God. So watch this. So that happens. He finds out that she is married to be with someone else, and he gets upset, and he just shuts it all down. He burns the tail of foxes. He throws them all out into the city. They catch on fire. And what do they do to retaliate? They kill his ex-wife. And so he finds himself in all of this mess and drama simply because he didn't do what he was supposed to do. He was disobedient. Now, when you really look closely to the book of Judges, Samson didn't really ask to be a Nazarite. Like, he was not one of the ones who actually made the vow. He was chosen by birth. It was told to his mom that he would be a Nazarite. And so that was the end of the story. He didn't really have a say-so in the matter. And I say that to say that sometimes in certain situations, we don't ask to be in them. Like, you know, we just want to live our lives. I know, like, when God kind of pulled my heartstrings and started, like, you know, dealing with me about my relationship with the Lord and who all I was called to be, I was not thinking about that at the time. As a matter of fact, I was thinking completely opposite. I thought I was going to be a hip hop artist. And that is a true story. And I love you too. And so what ends up happening is, I think I'm going to be this rap star called Kamikaze. It's a true story. I'm not lying to y'all. You cannot tell me nothing. I was going to be a hip hop artist, and that's what it was going to be. And here the Lord telling me something, I'm going to be something totally different. I'm like, I didn't ask for that. So I'm not going to do that because that's what you want me to do. That's not what I want to do. And that's the way, that was the position of Samson. Samson said to himself, like, listen, this is your call, not mine. You do you, I'm going to do me. The interesting part about that is, oh, hey, Jason, how are you? The interesting part about that is, although we didn't ask for the call or the main mandate that God has placed over our lives, what I believe is interesting enough is, even though we didn't ask for it, it's important for us to say yes. And the reason why we should say yes is because it's for in our best interest to do so. God was not trying to punish Samson. As a matter of fact, God was trying to protect Samson. But Samson could not embrace at the time the value that of who he was or what he brought to the table. And so by the time we get to chapter 16, Samson is off the chain, y'all. I mean, when I say off the chain, I'm talking about off the chain. And it's important that I just want to read this scripture super quickly. It's Romans 12, chapter 12, 1 and 2, right? It says, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that ye present your bodies as a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Yes, God allows permissible will, but we want the full benefits of who God has called us to be. In order to do that, we have to say a complete yes. And that's so important. You can try to ignore it and walk away and run. Trust me, I did it for many years, but you always end up saying yes. So it's best to do it God's way the first time. I'm going to read the Message version of Romans 12, 1 and 2 super quickly because I love how it reads. It says, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living oh, sorry, that's not the right version. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. Here's the Message version. God helping you take your everyday, ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, and walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. Why do I say this? Because sometimes we tend to compartmentalize our Christendom. We tend to compartmentalize our walk as Christian singles. But what this is saying to us is that we should present it all to God, not just parts of it. You know, some of us may be living a double lifestyle. We might be one way with our Christian friends, another way with our non-Christian friends, another way in the church, another way at work. But what this is saying here is that you take your everyday, ordinary life, everything that you do, eating, sleeping, drinking, whatever it is, and you present it as an offering unto God. So it should be pleasing unto the Lord. Embracing what God does for you is the best thing you can do for him. Don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking about it. We are supposed to stand out as Christians, period. You're not going to get along with everybody as Christians, period. Do we love everyone? Absolutely. But the fact of us walking in our true form of righteousness and holiness, it's going to rub some people the wrong way. But guess what? That's okay. Now, instead, fix your attention on God. You'll be changed from the inside out. Readily recognize what he wants for you and quickly respond to it. Unlike the culture around you, always dragging you down to its level of immaturity, God brings the best out of you, develops well-formed maturity in you. And so it's important, and you can read that in your own time. It's Romans 12, 1 and 2, the Message Bible. But I wanted to read that because it really gives you a full perspective of what Samson was really struggling with. He wanted to just be a regular, ordinary person. At the end of the day, he didn't want to save nobody. He wanted to live a righteous life, because by the time we get to chapter 16 in Judges, he is off the chain, which leads me to my next point. Don't be reckless. Samson was reckless. And it was partly because nothing had happened to him. He was super strong. Nobody could step toe to toe with him. Nobody could challenge him because, oh, thank you. Somebody said my hair is fine. Let me focus. Sorry. So nobody could step toe to toe with him, and so what he ended up doing is taking that for granted. He was like, "Ain't nobody gonna touch me." Nothing had happened to him up until this point. He almost got away with everything that he was doing and had a complete disregard for who God had called him to be, which leads me to my next point, which is don't take God's grace and mercy for granted. This is what he did. So, as a Christian believer, you don't want to be reckless. You want to not take his grace and mercy for granted. At a certain point, you have to take an account for the call and the mandate that is on your life. And in this case, he really didn't care. He didn't give a flip about what was happening. He was in a hurt place. Um, Things around him were happening that were out of his control. But what he could control, he didn't control. He didn't care anything about. Number three, the third tip that will help you to become or remain in your purpose-driven life as a Christian single is make sure you heal. And we've talked about this several different times, but I wanted to highlight it again because when you look at the story of Samson, right? In this particular book, it shows you very clearly, I talked about it earlier, his first wife betrayed him. And how she betrayed him is this. So, first off, he was showing off. So it shows him he's very immature. Samson was a very immature person. He's showing off. He's bragging to them. It's like, listen, I'm going to tell you a riddle. If you figure out the riddle, I'll give you this. If you don't figure out the riddle, you'll owe me that. And so he tells the riddle. Nobody knows. Nobody can figure out this riddle. I think he had 6 or 7 days. Can't remember what it was, but I'm kind of paraphrasing. And so they go to his wife and it's like, listen, I need you to get this intel. I need you to tell me what it is that, what this riddle is, what it means. And if you do, then we won't kill your family. So they threaten her. Now, mind you, she's married to Samson. So in my mind, you're married to the person who's been anointed and appointed to protect a whole nation. Why would you even be afraid? Like, you should have just told him what was happening, but she didn't. She tells the people, and because she tells the people, he knows that she was the one who told them because they wouldn't have known if she hadn't told them, right? So what happens is he gets upset. They sell off, not they don't sell off, but they take his wife and makes her marry his best friend or the best man to the wedding. True story. And he finds out, gets upset, comes back for his wife, gets upset that this has happened, and he destroys everything concerning the Philistines at that time. Like when I say he lit a match and blew it all up, that's exactly what he did. And so in turn, they kill his wife. So at the end of the day, Samson is working through betrayal. He's working through needing to be healed. He's working through unforgiveness. He's working through so many different things that he doesn't really ever come to terms with. And you can tell by the consistent decision making that he's done after this point. So when you don't heal properly, it really does cause you to make very bad decisions. It will cloud your judgment. It will make you view things from your feelings, and that is a terrible place to be in. You do not want to be so absorbed with your feelings that it causes you to make decisions that will ruin your destiny. And so this is what happens when you are not operating from a healed place. Have you ever been in a situation where you had a really, really, really bad relationship, or you had a really, really, really bad breakup, and after that moment, you're like, oh, all guys are the same way, or all women are the same way, or every time you date someone, it's like, I can't really fully embrace them. I can't really trust them because I've dealt with this situation prior to. Now, do I think that we should always identify things that might be potential red flags? Absolutely. But should we treat everybody bad because your last 3 relationships were bad? Absolutely not. Achilles says, yes, it makes you vulnerable. And you're absolutely positively right. And sometimes when you are operating from a place of not being healed, it will, like, ruin your judgment. It will ruin your judgment. And Samson was obviously, he was immature, he was disobedient, he lacked a level of respect. So he had things that he was working through that he needed to have resolved. And so it brings me to my next point, which is this: don't let sex cloud your judgment. I know y'all don't want to hear it tonight, but I'm going to give it to you the way God gave it to me. At the end of the day, if you are a Christian single and you are in a sexual relationship, or you are in intimate, let's say it a little bit more, the clean version, the PG version. If you're in an intimate relationship with someone, your emotions are all tangled in that situation. I guarantee you, the moment you take out those feelings, the moment you take out that lust factor, the moment you take out those desires, you can truly see the character of that person. Now, do people lie, cheat, and steal? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, when you don't have that connection tied to it, it's easier for you to walk away, especially for women. Men are a little bit different, not to say that they don't feel, because they do. But with women, we are totally we get, when we give ourselves in that manner, it's a very special, and it's a treasure that we are giving up. And so sometimes if we trip up and make that decision, we're almost trying to hold on to something because we've already put ourselves all the way out there. But I'm here to tell you that even in the midst of a situation you might have found yourself in, there's always the opportunity to recover. There's always the opportunity to reverse course and do things the right way. And so you don't want to let sex cloud your judgment, because you're going to find yourself like Samson was. Samson, by chapter 16, he finds himself in Gaza, and he ends up with this harlot, and he finds himself in a situation, and they go, oh, the Philistines are like, how can we get this guy? How can we trip him up? Up until this point, they couldn't figure out what to do. But because Samson showed a pattern of making the same mistake over and over again, they realized what his weakness was. What do y'all think his weakness was? Why take a sip of water? What do you think his weakness was? It was women. Women was his weakness. And because of that, they exploited that. So they go, okay, we see how he's rolling. Let's go and see if we can find a damsel that can identify what makes him so strong. Because every time they would fight this guy, he would always win. Didn't matter how many people in his army they would come up against him, and they would always lose because of his strength. And so Samson is killing the game, and he's doing it his way. He's not obedient to what God tells him to do or none of that. He's just doing what he wants to do. And so they're like, listen, we have got to find out what his weakness is. And so, they go, okay, it's women. So they talk Delilah into enticing him to find out his secret. Now, we could talk about Samson and Delilah, period. I don't have the time right now to do that, but maybe the next time we'll go into it a little bit more. But I promise you, we realized that sex really made Samson blind. It truly made him blind. And he was so caught up in what Foxy Brown called it. He was so caught up that he didn't really care, what she was asking him at a certain point. I promise you, if you take sex out of the equation, it helps you to see clear. And the reality is this was something that tripped Samson up. And I will tell you that living a life of celibacy is not easy. It's not, every day is not a walk in the park. You have to really watch your eye gates, your ear gates. You have to watch what you listen to. You have to watch the songs that you sing. You have to watch what you see on TV. Like, there are certain things I cannot watch. I got to turn it off. You hear me? I got to turn it off. It requires a level of consecration. But again, why do you think Samson was required to live a life of consecration? It was to help him avoid some of the pitfalls and mistakes that he made. And if he had just been obedient to what God told him to do, he would have found himself at a place of walking in peace and victory and not concerned about half the stuff that was being thrown in his direction. Because if he was living a consecrated life, he wouldn't be up in Gaza with harlots. He would have been at home where he was supposed to be. And so those are the things that you have to stay at the forefront of your mind, because yes, it helps us to avoid temptation when we stay in the will of God. Now, this leads me to my next point. They were able to identify what his weakness was, which was women. So number 5, don't ignore red flags. This is so important. You cannot avoid red flags. Why is that? Well, when you read the book of Judges, right? His first wife that was murdered, how she was able to talk Samson into telling her the what was happening with this riddle is she annoyed the crap out of him every day, night and day. Tell me what the riddle is. Tell me what the riddle is. Tell me what the riddle is, right? Oh, you should say, this is good teaching. Thank you so much. So he does eventually tell her. The interesting part about this is Delilah was just like his ex. She used the same exact antics. She used the same exact red flags to trip Samson up. If he had just paid attention, sometimes you might say, nah, that's too obvious. There's no way that they're coming at me the exact same way my ex did. There's no way. There has to be something different about them. Nope. If the red flag is the red flag, it's a red flag, right? They say if it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck. It's a duck. It's a duck. And so what Delilah did, which is the same thing that Samson's ex-wife did, she played on his heartstrings. And listen, I know that there are men on this line, and I'm certainly talking to you as well. And I know that you have feelings. But women, we have got to do better at not allowing people to take advantage of who we are and exploiting our weaknesses in that regard. And so here she goes. Delilah keeps begging him, tell me where your strength lies. Please, I'm telling you. And then this is what happens. She goes, but if you love me, you'll tell me. The exact same thing his ex-wife did. Just read it when you get a free minute. Read it. The exact same thing his ex-wife did. If you truly love me, you'll tell me. You'll tell me where your strength lies. This is where you have to be careful. You have to begin to know your weaknesses better than anyone else and work on them. Not just know them. Don't just realize how you get tripped up. Because this is where Samson, he never acknowledged anything that he did wrong. It never says that he wanted to make himself better. When he did things in the Bible, from the very first mistake that he made, I think it was in Judges 15, it might have been 14. He hides it. It says, the Bible says he hid it. He never addressed it. He never addressed his mistake. And because he got away with it in secret, he thought that he could continue to walk down that same path. But you have to realize that the enemy is paying attention to everything that you're doing. And so just because you haven't gotten caught yet, what you do in secret, you're going to be rewarded openly. And it's not just negative things. Positive things. It's negative things as well. And so know your weaknesses better than anyone else. Work on them. Don't let the enemy use you to destroy you. Don't let him use you to destroy you. And what the enemy was able to do with Samson, they knew that if they had the right woman to go into where he was, looking just right, smelling just right, saying the right things, that eventually he would break. Why? Because that's how he broke the first time. And so you have to be strong enough and mature enough. Let's sit right there. You have to be mature enough to say, here are my fatal flaws. God, help me to work through them. Because if you don't, it's going to come back to bite you. Don't expose your areas of opportunity to the world. I don't show y'all the things that I'm struggling with on here. Now, I maybe, share some things, but if I'm going through something, I'm going to God. And I'm saying, God, can you help me resolve this? Can you help me through this? Why? Because I don't want everything that I've worked on, everything that I've tried to overcome, I don't want that to be destroyed because of one stupid decision. And you shouldn't want to do that either. And so, it's interesting to me that Samson was so oblivious to Delilah and her antics. He was either so oblivious or he just didn't care at a certain point. Maybe it was self-sabotage. Who knows? But either way, she goes, listen, if you love me, you'll tell me. Mind you, not once did it say in the Bible that Delilah said, Samson, I love you. Not once in the Bible does it say that she loved him back. His perception had his judgment clouded. He loved her so much. And just because you love somebody else does not mean that they love you back. We talked about this several weeks ago. And so if it's not reciprocated, then what are you really doing? So Delilah uses his vulnerabilities, exploits them, gets the intel for the Philistines, and he's the one that's looking stupid in the end. And so Achilles says, lesson in life will repeat itself until the lesson is learned. So you might say, I am over this relationship, right? And then you go into the next relationship, but you continue to do the same things that you did in the old relationship. What do you think is going to happen? It's going to eventually fall apart. Why? Because if you want something different, you have to do something different. And so she loved him. He loved her, but she didn't love him. If you go back to chapter 14 or 15, when is talking about his ex-wife, I don't even think it said that she said she loved him. So what are we really doing? We in a relationship that's one-sided? We got to stop doing that to ourselves, because at the end of the day, we're the ones who end up suffering. And so it ended up being something that in the end, she gets the information, intel out of Samson. We know the rest of the story. For those who don't, what ends up happening is he tells her how he gets his strength. He keeps it unless his hair is cut off. He tells her this information. She goes back and tells the people. They come in, they cut his hair off. He loses his strength. They cut out his eyes. and they think it's over. They got him for sport out there walking around in the stadium like, ha ha, nanny boo boo, look what we did. The children of Israel no longer have their person to protect them because we done cut his eyes out, and here he is in front of everybody to see. They thought the story is over. But this is what I want to encourage somebody tonight that might have said, man, I sound just like Samson. That's me. I'm the one who keeps making mistakes over and over and over again. I want to encourage you, because in spite of it all, God can still use you. God can still restore you. And that's what I love about the Lord, is because it talks about at the end of the story where Samson comes to himself. He realizes the error of what he's done. And he's like, God, I just want you to vindicate me this one time. Give me just enough strength so I can knock these beams down. And he ends up destroying more Philistines than all of when he was in his full ministry up until that point because of it. But he had to suffer in the process. And if he had just followed the instructions of God and been obedient to what the Lord told him to do, he could have avoided a lot of the pitfalls that he went through. I remember when I was dating this particular person, and at the beginning of the relationship, the Lord told me straight up, they are not the one. And I don't, who knows why we do things we do, right? Who knows why we hear God say something and we just don't do what God tells us to do. But whatever the case was, I did not obey the Lord, and the Lord was right. He was a horrible fella. He was not trustworthy. He was a liar. He was this, that, and the third. Anyway, ended up getting pregnant by this guy, right? And so even to this day, some of the decisions that impact me are directly correlated to that decision. They're directly correlated to my disobedience and what God told me to do. Hey, Patricia, love you, girl. And for a long time, I beat myself up about it. For a long time, I said to myself, man, how could you have been so stupid? How could you have allowed yourself to be in a situation where this, you allow this guy to manipulate you? He was my Delilah in the sense of he told me everything that I wanted to hear. He told me that he loved me. He told me that he would be there forever. And he ends up not being there. He ends up being a liar and all of this and all of that. And I remember I had just been licensed to be a minister. I was just licensed. And after I was licensed, that's when it happened. And I'm in this relationship thinking, I got to get out of this. This is not good. And we're like, he's like, well, we should just get married. I'm like, yeah, we should. That's a good idea. We'll just get married. That'll fix everything. But that was going to fix his character. That wasn't going to fix who he was. And then when I found that I was pregnant, I was like, well, yeah, I definitely got to marry this guy now because I want to save face. I don't want to look crazy. I don't want to do this, that, and the third. But then when I found out more of how the Lord just kept like piling on, like, nah, Jack, this is not the one for you, baby. You better keep it moving. And it was so many red flags to the point where I could not ignore it any longer. I had to make a decision, and I had to do what was right for me and my destiny and for my children, for my child. And I ultimately said, I'm just not going to go forward with this relationship. It was too much. And I had to just cut my losses. Sometimes you just have to cut your losses. And I cut my losses. But there was a rebuilding phase in that. There was a rebuilding portion of my life where I had to pick up the pieces. I had to learn how to heal. I had to love myself again. I had to forgive myself for the decision that I made. I had to, start piece by piece, bit by bit, to put my life back together again. And I remember when I look back and I said to the Lord, I said, God, how did I get here? Like, how did I get so far off track of where you called me to be? And he reminded me of the routines that I had in place, the the consecrated life that I once lived, the fasting that I once did, the prayer that I was in, being active in church settings and environments. There were so many different things that protected me. And when I look at the story of Samson, God had anointed him with this supernatural strength under the condition that he protected it. As long as you are a Nazarite unto me, the Lord said to him, you'll be fine. But the moment that he got outside of the will of God, that's when it went from bad to worse. And so some of you might say, well, man, how do I get back on track? Start with your first love. Start with what the Lord told you to do. And you can't continue. There's somebody that I know, I love them dearly, and I want them to be in a very happy relationship, a whole relationship. But they keep making the decision to hang out with certain people and to go certain places. 99% of the time, you are not going to find your husband in the club. 99% of the time, you're not going to find your wife at Freaknik. 99% of the time, it's just not going to happen. And if you do, you have to think about, what is it that you're attracting or that you want to attract? The caliber of the person that you want to be with, is that really the place you want to go find them? It talks about how Samson was found in Gaza in the house of a harlot. And so they were like, okay, gotcha. So you got to make sure that you're surrounded by the right people, places, and things. And when you do that, you set yourself up in an atmosphere conducive for blessings, miracles, and favor. Now, I say all that to say that God restored me. It took some time spiritually. It took some time in the natural to me to get back to a place where I truly loved myself and trusted myself again. And what I want to encourage you, those of you who might say, man, I messed up. I might have been Samson. I might have exposed too much. I might have shared too much. I might have shown too much. Just know that God is a restorer. This is not a beat your brow type of message, but it is a reminder to say that these are the practical things that will keep you. And if you allow yourself to learn from Samson's example, I believe that you'll find yourself at a better place, that you'll be free from making the same mistakes that he made. So again, those were: know your value, don't be reckless, make sure you heal, don't allow sex to cloud your judgment, don't ignore red flags, and know that God can still use you. And once you've applied those 6 things, I promise you, I want you guys to inbox me and tell me your testimonies about how you began to put your life back on track by applying those principles. I promise you that you will do just that. I love you guys with the love of the Lord. Continue to pray for me as I pray for you. Know that I'm rooting for you. Know that I want to see you all make it. There have been so many ladies and gentlemen that have come through, have connected with either Singles on the Rise or Live Chats with Shavonda, or just my daily inspirational messages. And they've come back and shared testimonies about, how their lives have been changed. I want to hear from you. If it's something that this platform has impacted you in any way, shape, or form, we want to know about it. We want to know about you, and we want to know about that. Will you give me your notes from tonight? Eli, yes, you can go back and view the live. I just shared the 6 points that we went over, and they were outlined throughout the live. So I'm wrapping up now. Thank you guys so much for hopping on and connecting with me. Remember, if you want to change your life, you want to go from good to great, you might be at a glass ceiling and you want to burst through it. You feel like you need someone to help with motivation or to push you and to help you go from one place to the next. I'm your girl. You can reach out to me directly via email, ShavondaRDixon@gmail.com. .com, or inbox me at Shavonda Dixon on one of my social media channels. I would love to be your one-on-one life coach. Let me tell you something tonight. Thank you, Explosive 75. That I have heard so many testimonies about people who have joined the live chats and have signed up for the one-on-one life coaching sessions. And I promise you, when I tell you their lives have never been the same, I'm not just saying it. I'm telling you right now. So make sure that you inbox me for more details regarding that. Also, I have a online boutique for those who are not aware. Jesus Groupie Clothing. Yes, 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 yes. And I have a 60% off sale. I don't know, Patricia, if you're on the line, because she's one of my most valuable customers, clients. She's my VIP. We have a sale for 3 days. I mean, I was like, you know what? It's Jesus Ruby Clothing. Jesus died and rose on the third day. Resurrection Sunday was yesterday. It's got to be the best sale of the year, right? And so we put everything on the site on sale. If you use code Jesus23, you will receive 60% off your entire purchase. And this merchandise is not, shabby. This is top of the line merchandise. You don't want to miss this sale. It goes off tomorrow at midnight. So if you have not already checked this out, you can go to thejgshop.com. Again, that's thejgshop.com to receive 60% off of your merchandise. Okay. So I love you guys with the love of the Lord. Continue to pray for me as I pray for you. And when I tell you, I am so excited to share with you each and every week. I am. Tomorrow night, I will be on I Need a Word. If you don't know this particular platform, Quanda Renee is the host, and she is an amazing woman of God. I'm so honored to be sharing with her and some other leading singles in the Christian world about just being saved and single. So please, I'll make sure that I post that information on my site tonight and tomorrow. Make sure that you tune in tomorrow for I Need a Word. And also, on Tuesdays, we have our podcast, But Clearly Podcast, with my two girlfriends. And so I want you guys to make sure that you have subscribed to But Clearly Podcast on YouTube. We have a new video that drops every single Tuesday. Also, if you have not, please go to my YouTube channel, Shavonda R. Dixon, and make sure that you subscribe. I have a lot of things happening in the works. I can't share too much about it, but let me just tell you, it's all great things. So with that being said, I love you guys. I'm well over my time. Thank you, Patricia. I love you so much. Eli says, I need a coach, woman of God. Okay, inbox me, Eli, and we will get you set up. He says you are an inspiration to many of the singles. To God be the glory. I'm just trying to help somebody to escape some of the pitfalls and mistakes that I found myself in the past. But the good thing about God is he is restorer of all things, and he'll surely restore you. So I love you guys. I will talk to you all next time. Until then, you have an amazing, amazing day and an amazing week. I love you all so much. See you next time.